Last week, here in France, a 28-year-old man was charged over a rape committed in the central French city of Poitiers back in 2015. He was identified thanks to DNA, not by his own directly. It was family members who'd gone to seek their family tree. And a new French investigative unit had, which deals with cold cases, had called up their counterparts in the United States, where these genealogy sites are located. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Thierry Lévêque. He's the author of The Continent of the Forgotten, which is out in French, hopefully soon in English. Thanps for being with us here on France.
No, I'm thanking you. Thank you.
Thierry, this case of he was known as the rapist with the screwdriver, is how the French knew him. This man was underage when he committed this crime, or allegedly
17. Yeah.
And again, in France, it's illegal to
Yes.
to do those genealogy tests.
Not exactly. It's illegal to make files with particular people who want to have information about their origins, like...
Explain, first of all, why it's illegal in France.
Because you cannot make business with DNA in France, basically. You can only make judicial identification and register people who have already had problems with justice police who have been sentenced already. But you cannot make a business with genealogy, knowing the origins. It's illegal.
That's
not even
illegal
in France, in Europe, in whole Europe.
So it's illegal in Europe, but what is legal is to call your friends at the FBI.
Yes. So that's the juridical problem, which must be solved, definitely, probably by a later decision. But most of the specialists say that if you ask something to the US, which is legal in the US, and take the result to make a trial in France with so something illegal abroad, so it can be legal in our system. It can seem bizarre,
there's a gray area, you're saying,
but it works like this also in other fields, financial information, etc. If you ask Italy for financial information, which would be illegal to be collected in France, but you have it in Italy where it's legal, etc., you can proceed this way. So basically, we need the USA to make our own investigations. That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem because the secret of our crimes lies in the beneath the Atlantic, over the Atlantic, in the private registers constituted by my DNA, Ancestry, MyHeritage, etc., private companies. You have 2 million French people who have been registered in this voluntarily, in these files, in these private companies, and it's a sample. It's a sample sufficient to find relatives for anybody.
Right, and so this is, I guess, your book has both reasons to despair and reasons to hope.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll start with the reasons to despair. You focus on cold cases here in France of serial killers from the 1980s. And the reasons to despair is you describe in heartbreaking fashion how over the years a lot of the evidence was destroyed.
Yes, my book's name is The Continent of the Forgotten, because during the 80s and 90s, even the reality of serial killings were not admitted in our country. French people, French police did think it only existed in the US. So it was ignored. So the techniques and the organization of the criminal investigations were completely away from this film. So
yeah, and there's all kinds of fights between different police units. The gendarmes don't talk to
different
the police.
territories, different corpses, etc.
Yeah.
It's completely obsolete, out of epoch. You know, it belongs to the 19th century, basically, organization. So we must react, and that's why I told the story in this book of this new judicial unit created in Nanterre in 2022, which is dedicated to cold cases, ancient crimes not solved, serial killers, etc. It is a French exception because, of course, these kind of investigations are practiced overseas in other countries, but no country had ever created a special place. So there are only 4 investigating magistrates. It's quite small for the moment. But the issue in itself has been considered as specific, and so that is completely French.
And same as what we said in catching the screwdriver, or the rapist with the screwdriver, once again, in the book, you credit the United States. Let's take a look. Popular television series.
Very popular.
Called Cold Case.
Broadcasted on 5 channels in France since 2010. And it has produced
still
many
playing the reruns.
copies. It has produced many copies in the radio, on TV.
So the French watch this American
Of course.
crime and drama show,
And it has-
they're inspired by it to create this unit?
Yeah, so this TV series, American, actually introduced the issue culturally in our patrimony. You know, this idea of ancient crimes not remain unpunished, and it's an injustice. Most of the times, it's among crimes committed among poor social middles. So there is
People from people from working classes.
well, working class, yes. So has become an issue in our culture also. And for instance, there was a movie called La Nuit du 12, The Night of the 12th, which had many awards, even in Cannes, etc., which related recently, a few years ago, a cold case, a French cold case of the Paris region. So I think the issue has begun to appear in our background, in our cultural background, in our worries, in the judicial debate, in the policemen began to work on it. This unit was created in Nanterre, but the French politicians are not really interested in this for the moment. It is not a political issue. And I think it's a problem because we are on the verge of a revolution which has started in the US, and we are very late on this criminal investigation revolution.
Yeah, at least one of those 2 cases, the 2 big ones that you mentioned, they're solved thanks to this American-style work. A couple of quick questions for you, Thierry Lévêque. First of all, again, these are reasons to hope. You talk more broadly about a homicide rate here in France, which has dropped drastically since the 1980s. Do we know why?
Because the violence has been decreasing. That's
because on TV it looks like the opposite. You watch the.
Of course, it's completely counterintuitive. But the fact is that there were about 2,000 homicides a year in the 90s in France, and nowadays we are about at 1,000 a year, twice less than 30 years ago, because culture. We don't have weapons in France. You cannot buy a weapon. In the States, for instance, it's 25 more.
The homicide rate has gone up, whereas here it's dropped by half at least.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had for you, Thierry, was you still have in France this special status, investigating magistrates,
Yes.
what they call les juges d'instruction in French, which are not exactly judges, but not exactly police either. They're in between, if you will. And in your book, you describe cases where investigating magistrates sometimes get it right and often get it wrong. They follow their nose rather than speaking to policemen who've been working on the case. Is that changed since the 1980s, or is it still the same?
I think it has changed because the competence, the technical abilities, the techniques in themselves have improved, of course, the solutions, the work in the criminal investigation. But still, nowadays, the rate of solving crimes is about 70-80%. So it has not... Crimes decrease, but you don't solve more in proportion. You solve, in France, 80% of crimes. So 20% remain unsolved. And this is not normal, because with the DNA, other modernization of the techniques, we should improve this. We should decrease even more the violence.
And that brings me to my very last question. In your book, you describe how when those girls are abducted and killed in the 1980s, the crimes are not taken very seriously oftentimes because the victims are working class. They're not. You talk about unsolved crimes. What proportion of those unsolved crimes, you got to wonder, are from those working classes? Do you take crime as seriously when it's someone poor as when it's someone who's rich?
Unfortunately, it is quite common, not even in France. If you are poor and you cannot afford a lawyer, a good lawyer, you don't have social networks, social support, you can be forgotten more quickly in the criminal case, unfortunately, than if you are rich, you have a good lawyer that can stimulate the system, and you have connections to also provoke some new investigations. That's the fate of working class people. That is why this TV series Cold Case was a success, because it speaks about that also, because it's the same situation in the US. And I think this injustice is also the center of the problem I wanted to deal with in this book, the injustice towards justice and towards crime.